Hi, my name is Alan, and I've put together this short video for those going to the Russia World Cup in 2018. Whether you've been to World Cups in the past or this is your first time, I'm sure you'll find this video very informative and useful. There are a lot of peculiarities with this World Cup. First, it's taking place in a country which isn't exactly a hotbed of soccer, and there was some controversy in Russia being chosen. There are also a lot of misconceptions, stereotypes surrounding Russia and their people, which I hope this video helps clarify. Next, there's also the introduction of this fan ID, and I'll spend some time going over this because this is pretty important. So basically, this video acts as kind of a tutorial for those going to the World Cup 2018 in Russia, and it kind of mirrors my blog. The blog was based on my experience at the Confederations Cup this past summer in 2017. And the blog has a lot of short videos and links, and it's also an excellent resource for those that are going. This video takes you on my personal experience from obtaining tickets in the fan ID, to traveling to Russia, the accommodations I had there, attending the games, and I also filmed some around the sights and sounds of Moscow and St. Petersburg where I visited. I'll also go over what to bring along with you, what to travel with, how to dress, how to stay in touch with other people in Russia and people back home, and what to expect on game day. So please be sure to like this video, share it, and add any comments you like at the bottom. Okay, so the first thing is purchasing your tickets. This process is a little different than in the past due to more rigid requirements and guidelines, specifically the introduction of the fan ID. You must purchase your tickets on the FIFA site, and I'll leave the link below. This is because according to FIFA, this is the only place you can legitimately purchase tickets. And being that you now need the fan ID, it is literally impossible to purchase tickets from third parties and resellers, so don't even bother. You have to open an account on the FIFA site, and then once you open your account, you click on Apply for Tickets. There are 3 sales phases for purchasing tickets. I myself am waiting until the next sales phase, which for me is on December 5th, which is after the drawing, because I just prefer to know who I'm going to be watching and where and all the venues and everything. I didn't want to go through this first sales phase without knowing the teams. You can purchase tickets in the group phase for $105, $165, and $210, depending on which category. During the Confederations Cup, I purchased the medium range, which was a little bit less than $165, but I don't like purchasing tickets behind the goal. If I'm going to go all the way to Russia, I want to get some decent tickets. So I'll probably get the medium range, or maybe even the higher price tickets, because it might be easier to get the higher price tickets. You can purchase 4 different ticket products. The first one is individual matches, where you just pick the matches you want. The second one is venue specific, where you watch all the games at a specific venue except the quarter, semi, and final matches. The third one is team specific, which allows you to follow your national team right up to the final match if they make it that far. And the last one is supporter tickets and conditional supporter tickets, which are a little bit more complex, so it's better you just go to the FIFA site to see that. If you purchase tickets and later decide not to go to Russia, the only legitimate way to exchange them is on the FIFA platform at face value. According to the FIFA website, tickets can only be resold or transferred via FIFA's website. So what would happen if you do purchase a ticket and decide to give it to a friend or relative or to sell it to somebody else? To me, it's a little bit of a gray area because your name is printed on the ticket, and when you go through security at the stadiums, you have to present your fan ID and then the game ticket. Now, we went to a game in Spartak Stadium at the Confederations Cup, and the group that we were with accidentally mixed up some of the tickets, and they were able to get through with somebody else's ticket. So from the way I'm reading it right now, as long as you have your fan ID, you possibly could use somebody else's ticket, but I can't verify that 100%. I think if you're going all the way to Russia anyway, it's just best to do it right. Have your fan ID, your legitimate ticket, and just get to the games without any problems. That would be my advice. So I'll put a short video right here on our experience at the stadium. So after you apply for the tickets, you will get a confirmation number. And with this confirmation number, you will then apply for the coveted fan ID. The people who are traveling with you will use the same confirmation number to apply for their respective fan IDs. Sometime after April 1st, 2018, you will receive your World Cup tickets by courier. And the fan ID, I have no idea. It's anybody's guess when you'll get that. So here's the fan ID. This is the one that I got for the Confederations Cup. And just a short little note, the fan ID is something Russian authorities requested FIFA allow them to have. And it's not really affiliated with FIFA, and it could be that this fan ID is only used for the Russian games and not any World Cup in the future. I'm not sure. I don't know if anybody knows that. And it just kind of adds another level of security, and it really allows the authorities in Russia to know, to kind of like vet everybody and know exactly who's going to be at every other game before the first game even begins. So, I mean, this is so that you don't have people just, showing up in Russia maybe for the knockout round and trying to buy tickets on the street, and the authorities in Russia not know who's at every game. You should apply for the fan ID as soon as possible, as the process, it's quite involved. First, you will need the confirmation number, as I mentioned, from your ticket purchase, and those going with you will also need to get a fan ID, so they'll need your same confirmation number, and they'll have to go through the same process and have the fan ID mailed to them. You'll also need information from your passport, so just make sure that your passport is up to date and that it will be valid when you're in Russia next in 2018. The fan ID acts as a visa for citizens of country where a visa is required. So if I were to go to Russia outside of the World Cup, it's a whole other process to apply to get a visa, and it would cost me $155. And actually, it's a quite more involved process. So this fan ID is actually a great way to go to Russia without a visa. And if I were to get a visa, it would cost me $155, which is basically the cost of one of the games. So for people traveling from the U.S. and from other countries where you need a visa, it actually could save you some money. From what I understand, people that don't need a visa to travel to Russia can pick up their fan ID in Russia at one of the the FIFA centers. But I would definitely try to get this thing before I even travel to Russia, because I think it'd be a big hassle if you don't have it before you go. So after you apply for the fan ID, you'll receive updates via text and email, and they were very good about this, and I knew exactly when it was sent to me, and I was able to track when it got to my city here in the United States. The hardest part about getting the fan ID for me was to get a good picture, and I probably tried about 15 times and had to just keep uploading pictures after picture after picture, and it was very, very frustrating. The other thing is that the fields that you have to fill out in the application, they're very confusing. It seems like they're more set up for people in Russia because they have what province you're in and which territory and all that. I was also a little apprehensive about receiving the fan ID on time, but we did get it a few weeks before we traveled, and like I said, I was kept up to date the whole process when it was mailed out and then when it arrived at my mailbox when I should pick it up. I do, however, suspect there will be issues with people all around the world. Everyone in the world has to get one of these before they arrive to Russia, and they arrive by courier, which isn't always reliable. And I know in some countries there's strikes and people are moving from one address to another and other things going on. As of November 1st of 2017, you can reserve a spot on the free intercity train with a confirmation number from your game ticket. I'll place the link below. At the Confederations Cup, we did not take advantage of the free intercity train transport, but instead used the high-speed train from Moscow to St. Petersburg, which is very comfortable and efficient and was reasonably priced. It was for me, it was only a little bit over $100. And I'll leave some information on that below also, and it's also a lot of information blog. But the high-speed train, it was good. It only took 4 hours. The regular train would have taken about 9 hours, but that, like I said, that one will be free, so you might want to do that. You will also need your fan ID and game tickets for free metro and bus transportation within the host cities on game day. And I'll have a video about that. Finally, I was able to travel from Moscow airport to downtown Moscow when I arrived in Moscow by commuter train with my game ticket for a Moscow match and my fan ID. For us, this train was free, but if you're going to another city in Russia to watch a game, you'll have to, if you want to take this service, you'll have to pay $10 because the service is only good for people that have tickets for game tickets in Moscow. The train service is called Aero Express and it's on the top floor of the airport in Moscow, so you might want to check that out. So basically my advice is to keep your fan ID with you the entire time you're in Russia and guard it with your life. And I kept mine a lot of times in my money belt, but it does say here, let me read this. During the 2017 Confederations Cup, a spectator must wear a fan ID on the chest over their clothes in such a way that the fan ID front side with a photo is visible. It is not recommended to cover or hide a fan ID. There you go. So you have your World Cup tickets in hand. Your next question obviously is, how do I get to Russia? If you have the time and you like to travel, you could do what I did for the Confederations Cup. I went from JFK to London, which cost me about $300, a little bit less than $300 actually, on Norwegian Airlines. It's no-frill airlines, and they charge you for everything. If you bring over 10 kilos of carry-on luggage, it's going to cost you $65, so keep your luggage light, and it's a good idea to travel light anyway. From London, I made my way through Brussels to Amsterdam, and then from Amsterdam, I flew to Berlin, which cost me only $100 on EasyJet, which is another no-frills airline, and I had a great time in Berlin. I had never been there. And then from Berlin, I caught a flight to Moscow, and that was $100 on Air Baltic.
Hello from Riga in the Baltic state of Latvia. I'm connecting to Moscow. I left from Berlin this morning. The flight we got was it was only $100, so it's on Baltic Air. Pretty easy to get here. The fan ID worked perfectly, so I was a little apprehensive about that, but that's no problem. And I should be in Moscow in a few hours. I'll see you there.
So if you don't mind traveling around and you want to see a few sites, it may be about the same price, or could be actually even less, in flying directly to Russia, and possibly quite easier. I arrived yesterday in Moscow, and last evening I made it to the hotel. I did need a little help. The language barrier is kind of tricky, but I did find somebody who happened to be a retired captain of the Russian army, and he was able to bring me right to my hotel with no problem. He spoke English very well. People here, some of them are very nice, but like I said, the language is difficult. It's very difficult to communicate at times. So here's what you need to know. When you get to the airport, just have your passport and fan ID ready. Your fan ID, as you know, works as a visa, so you don't need a visa. Just go right into immigration with your passport and your fan ID. When you walk out into the lobby, there will be volunteers. They have a orange and purple jacket on. They're the fan ID volunteers. They're very eager to help, but sometimes they may give you some wrong information. I ended up in a subway station or metro station far away. Good luck. We're heading to Red Square pretty soon, and we'll see you there. I'm at the Red Square now. I did a little sightseeing. There's Lenin's mausoleum over on the left. There's the Kremlin Museum is behind that a little ways. There's shopping stores, museums, a lot of stuff to see. And this is probably going to be where everybody hangs out during the World Cup. It's a great meeting place, great place to be. So I'll see you here next year if I'm here. The next issue I'd like to discuss is security. Unfortunately, Russia is a target of international terrorism due to its involvement in the Middle East conflicts and also unrest in some of its breakaway states from the former Soviet Union, such as Pakistan, Uzbekistan, and some other breakaway states. There was a terrorist attack in St. Petersburg in the subway system on April 3rd of this year. There's also an issue with homebred hooligans and possibility of people coming from other countries and creating a lot of problems. And getting into the games is very similar to going through an airport with metal detectors and body searches and all that. So I felt safe at the games. And to be honest, during this past trip, I went from England all the way to Russia, and I visited a lot of countries along the way. And I actually did feel the safest in Russia. Okay, the next topic is the Russian currency, which is the ruble, and also exchanging money. When I was in Russia this past summer for the Confederations Cup, the exchange rate was $1 to about 55 rubles. And I used my debit card at ATM, actually right at ATM machines, actually right when I arrived at the airport, I was able to get rubles. And for large purchases outside the airport, when I was around town and everything, for the hotel or going out to dinner or whatever, I did use my credit card, but the fees seem to be very high, so I would check with your financial institution before you leave. Just find out what the fees are. And you can also exchange US dollars in euros and also euros at banks in Russia. I didn't do that, so I don't have any experience with that. I can't tell you how that works. You can see if you can exchange money here in the United States or your home country before you travel to Russia. Just let your bank know ahead of time, because a lot of banks don't have rubles, obviously, so you could look into that also. And I'd also advise your financial institution where you are traveling and the dates, because there's a good possibility, with there's so much fraud going on these days, that your bank will freeze your credit card or debit card if they see some suspicious, what they deem to be suspicious activity. So just let them know ahead of time. You don't want to get over there, start using your card, and then it gets frozen and you can't use it for the rest of your trip. Okay, the next topic to discuss is lodging. And obviously this is a very important subject to discuss, and it's something you got to plan well in advance, and I would start looking into it as soon as possible. Just to give you a little perspective, last summer when I was in Russia for the Confederations Cup, I was in St. Petersburg and Moscow, and these are two cities. They're two of the four largest cities in all of Europe, and there were a lot of tourists there, a lot of Asian tourists. And there are two cities that can handle a very large influx of tourists. So I wouldn't be too worried if you're watching games in those two cities. Sochi is also another big tourist city, and they are very well equipped to handle large amounts of tourists, and they do have there's a large capacity up there as well. Outside of these three cities, it will be very difficult to find a room. I did a little research. It's the middle of December right now, and outside of Sochi, Moscow, St. Petersburg, you are going to have difficulties. There aren't a lot of rooms, and the rooms that are available are very expensive. Even for hostels, I've seen over $100 a night, and up to like $3,000 for 3 days, which is kind of crazy. But I did some research on Booking.com. I would try to book as soon as possible if you can. Booking.com is good because a lot of times you can change your reservations, cancel your reservations without any penalty, and a lot of times you don't even need a credit card or a deposit to reserve a room. So that's where I would go, and I'll leave a link down below and also on the blog. You could also go to the FIFA website, and I'll leave a link below and on the website to find rooms through FIFA. They do seem to be very scarce as well, and also very pricey. So I would start my search as soon as possible. And in the worst case scenario, if you can't find a room, I'd say your best bet is just renting a car, going and watch a game in one of these cities, and then as soon as the game is over, just get out of that city and try to find a room in another city close by. But I would start planning ahead as soon as possible. Okay, just a few more things to go over before I wrap this up. The next thing is the weather. In St. Petersburg, it was much colder than I thought it would be, especially considering it was June. In the daytime, it's probably about in the 50s, maybe in the 60s. It was rather rainy when we were there, which I wasn't expecting all that rain. At nighttime, it gets below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which is less than 10 degrees Celsius. So be prepared for rain. When you go out during the day, bring a rain jacket with you. Also, I would bring an extra pair of socks, put them in your backpack when you're walking around, put them in your bag. You don't want to be walking around, with wet feet all day. I'd also bring a few pair of long sleeve shirts for this trip. It does get a lot cooler than you would think it would. In Moscow, it was a little bit warmer, but it was still on the cool side. During the day, I wasn't sure if it would be proper to wear shorts. It was probably in the 70s, and I just wasn't sure if shorts were good or not. So actually, I found these pants convertible that converted to shorts. I found them online on Amazon after my trip. Excuse the broken arm. I broke my arm playing soccer a couple weeks ago. But I found these online. They're perfect for your trip. I'll put them on the blog, and I'll also put it below. They're water repellent. They're very lightweight, and they dry quickly. So I would have something like that for your trip. The next thing is the language barrier. It's a good idea to learn a few words in Russian if you can. While I was there, I couldn't find many people that spoke English, but the ones that did were extremely helpful. We got confused a few times, and the subway system is very hard to understand. The signs on the street, the subway stations, the people were extremely helpful, but it is kind of complicated to find somebody that speaks English. Look for the Van ID volunteers, or they're in the tourist areas, and also in all the major transportation hubs. The next thing is travel insurance. Before I got too involved in this trip to Russia last summer, I wasn't sure how to go about the whole thing, and I was just looking into general information on visas and everything, and I saw that you had to get travel insurance to get a common visa. Later on, I discovered that the fan ID takes the place of the visa for countries that you need a visa, including the United States. So I did not need travel insurance, but I had already purchased it. I think it's a very good idea to have it. It was only about $40, and it goes well beyond just health issues, including cancellation of your trip. So I'll leave a link below and also on the blog. So if you can get travel insurance for $40, I think that might be worth it. It's from AIG. The next thing I just want to discuss is how much are you going to spend while you're there. I found the prices to be about the same as they were, as you'd find in the United States or anywhere else in Europe. And like anywhere else, if you're frugal and know how to save money in certain areas while you travel. I went to the grocery store a lot, and we bought cold cuts and cheese and bread. The grocery stores were, they were gold for us. We bought everything we needed, and we brought it back to the hotel. And every night we just had a little party with wine and beer and sandwiches. So that would be my tip for saving money. Just go to the stores and buy as much as you can. You are going to want to go to some museums, especially if you're in St. Petersburg. There's 300 museums, so I mapped this out ahead of time. Everybody goes to the Winter Palace, the Hermitage. It's beautiful there. I think it costs about $10 or $15. They have different options to get in. Just one piece of advice: there's a long line to get when you get there in the morning. There's a long line to get in. Don't get in that line. If you go into the Hermitage on the right-hand side, you'll see a door that you can go in for guided tours. Spend the extra $5 or $10, whatever it is. Get the guided tours. You get a much better tour, you'll bypass that line, because that line, you'll stand in that line for over an hour. That's the one good tip that I have about seeing the Hermitage, or any museum for that matter. In St. Petersburg, I would also try to take a boat trip. We weren't able to do it this past trip. Hopefully I'll do it this time at the World Cup, but it rained a lot when we were there. We just didn't want to go out. The day that we planned to go, we didn't want to go out in the rain. In Moscow, it's well worth going to the Kremlin if you can go. There's different tickets to get in there. We just got a general ticket that got us into all the churches and the plaza area, and it was much different than what I thought it would be. The Red Square, you could just walk around there. You can go to the Mausoleum, which is free. Lenin's Mausoleum, that's free. You could just walk around there. You're not going to spend too much money in Moscow as far as the museums and stuff go, or at least I didn't. But I mean, just spend what you want to spend. Finally, the last thing to talk about is game day. What's it going to be like getting to the stadium? Try to get there early. There's a lot of security to go through. When we were there, it was very efficient. We went through pretty quickly. There weren't as many people at the Confederations Cup as there are going to be at the World Cup, but get there early. You can bring in a bag. This is the bag that I brought in. I'll also put a link on the blog and below. You can bring a small bag into the stadium. No food, no drink is allowed. I just brought in, I believe I had just my poncho, rain jacket, and a few other small items. Outside of the stadium, there is a place where you can check your bags. I know a lot of people are going to arrive in the city, perhaps in the city the day of the game. They want to check their bag at the stadium, and then after the game, pick it up. But give yourself probably at least an hour after the game to get your bag. If you got a flight to catch or something, you might be pushing it. The line was huge, although I did see people say that it went pretty quickly. But give yourself some time. The line that I saw in St. Petersburg was huge. The other thing, make sure you have your fan ID and your game ticket in your hand and ready to go through into the stadium. You're not going to be able to get into the stadium without both of these. Oh, and I almost forgot. At the games, they sell beer. They sell Budweiser, which is the official sponsor, I guess. And they also sell this Russian beer. And contrary to popular belief, I did hear some vicious rumors about Russian beer being really bad. It's not that bad. And we were able to get a 4-pack, and actually 4 cups. And here's the cup. And the Russian beer is good. It was 200 rubles, which is about $4. We got it. I loved it. Get the Russian beer, stay away from the Bud. Okay, and just to wrap things up, I think my number one piece of advice would be just to travel light and travel wise. Don't bring a lot of stuff with you. We were able to wash clothes along the way. Sometimes I just wash some of my clothes in the shower. In St. Petersburg, the place that we were at, the hotel, did have a laundry service. It was only like $5 or $10. I would do that. Don't bring a lot of clothes. You could always wash clothes. That would be my number one piece of advice. A few other things that I think you need to bring with you, need to have on the trip. This first one is an adapter to put in the plug. This worked actually in all of Western Europe and Russia except for Great Britain. I don't know why, but these things don't work in Great Britain. But Moscow and St. Petersburg, they work fine. There's two inputs. There's one on top and then one in the front. So you can have two people charge their iPhone or whatever at the same time. I'll leave a link on the blog and also down below. They're only like $6. I would pick up, maybe one or two of them. That would be my advice on that. The next thing you need to have is a SIM card or some way to get internet access, especially when you're using Google Earth on the streets. My piece of advice for that would be either get a SIM card. I'll leave a link below for SIM cards. You can also get them in Russia. I also found it kind of weird, but when I went to Subway sandwich shops, I was able to get a Wi-Fi connection for free at Subway sandwich shops. Just don't get the hot dog Subway sandwich, but I was able to get internet access. And when I punched in the place I wanted to go, I walked out of the Subway shop, and for some reason, even though I was out of distance, I was still able to follow where I wanted to go using Google Earth. I don't know why it kept working, even though I didn't have the SIM card working at that particular time, and I was away from the Subway shop. So that's something that's important to have. Next, the last thing is I bought this on Amazon. It's a Samsonite. It's a backpack and a bag in one. It's got straps in the back to use as a backpack. It's also got a handle that pulls out with wheels. It's got a lot of little compartments all around the side. Everything I needed fit in here. When traveling by plane, there's not a lot of room. One time I wasn't able to put it in the overhead storage bin. This actually fit in the seat in front of me. It saved me a lot of money. I didn't have to pay to check the baggage, and it was very convenient walking around the streets with the wheels. That's something you got to have if you don't have one already. I'll leave a link for that, as I mentioned the other products too, on the blog and below. So that's it. I'm heading to Russia this summer. I hope to see you there. I'm going to fly to Ireland and trek my way over. I think I'm going to go through Scandinavia, maybe arrive from Helsinki. My country's not going to be there, unfortunately. So I don't know who I'm going to root for. I'm leaning towards Iceland, but I'd like to see Brazil play in St. Petersburg. That's always a big party, and that's what it's all about, having fun. So I hope to see you there. Have a good time, and hopefully your country will do well, and maybe you'll bring home the trophy.